Los Angeles Department of Transportation. I've had that job since 2014, and we are so excited that you all took the time, first of all, to propose and get on our bench. We appreciate all of the unusual, uncomfortable, time-consuming, and headache-inducing steps that we force people to go through. But the good news is we're only making you do it once, and now you're inside the tent and we get to do the fun stuff. So the intent of this morning and today's workshop is to lay out for you really a new way of framing, a new posture on the part of LADOT, and specifically the kinds of products and services that we are hoping to co-collaborate with you on in the future. So I think it is valuable always to know who is in the room, and though there are a lot of you, I still think it is going to be a good use of time for everybody to just say their name and company. So let's start over here.
Raj Amin, Amos Budget Group.
Bob McConaughey with Civic Connect.
Kenny Shell, DKS. Larry Henson, Transport.
Sesh Raj, DSS.
Larry Naftali with Somas.
Carlos Ortiz, Advanced Consulting.
Marcel Bonas, LADOT.
Todd Peterson, LADOT. Shane Hibbs, Lantern Consulting.
Arya Rohani, Stantec.
Jonathan Garrett, Stantec.
Bridget Smith, LADOT.
Sal Actor, Street Light Data.
Rick Azer with Black and Beach.
Randall Kaufman, Black and Beach.
Andy Chatham, Transdev.
Dick Alexander, Transdev. Neil Hevanover, Transdev. Nathan Barry, Passport.
Ellie Hubbard, DKS Associates.
Mike Brown, Southwest Research Institute.
Ryan Johnson, also Planning and Design.
Margaret Novak, Michael Baker International.
Matt Smith, Michael Baker International.
Mike Pond, County Consultant. Charles Steiner, County.
Jordan Franklin, County Melbourne.
Nima Rahimi, Chariot Ford.
Mariko Davidson, Ford Smart Mobility.
Eugene Malanapi, East West Enterprise. Alan Clowley with Ecolite.
Alec Kosepin, Iteris.
Mike Toxteen, Public Matters.
Rihanna Strada, Public Matters.
Peter Hogan, Bicycle Transit Systems.
Joanne Gillenspitz, Mapillary.
Ryan Cook, Mapillary.
Julie Guzman, Nelson Ivan. Wendy Tao, Siemens. Julia Thane, Siemens.
Jack Backett, Paralytics.
Mike Billy, BMW Design Works.
Jack Schrein, BMW Design Works.
Jonathan Manson, BMW Design Works.
Chris Parker, Keyless.
Sandy Hill, Keyless. Stuart South, WSP.
Tanya Honey, Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative.
Russ Svoboda, Verizon.
Jimmy Kim, Verizon.
HP Lee, Verizon Smart Communities.
Chris Terhune, Wipro. Scott Buckwell, Wipro.
Sodium Rosario, Uber.
Sarah Ashton, Uber.
Craig Nelson, Student XP.
Stacey Hummels from IBI.
Noah Fletnick, Zendrive.
Tom, maybe. Let's start back there. Sure, you.
Rafi Marderosian, Ouster.
Sriyan from City Labs.
Chelsea Richard, Graham Sears.
Tom Lawfare, Pierce.
Rosa DeSalvo, Blue Thornton.
Carly Marquez, AECOM.
David Rosa, AECOM.
Jacqueline Gomez, Eric. Robin Aksu, LADOT.
Paul Anderson, LADOT. John Rassan, LA Commotion.
Herb Higginbotham, Cambridge Systematics.
Clint Angeles from RSG.
Lily O'Brien, LADOT.
Monique Girl, LADOT.
Mackenzie Racy, LADOT.
Monty Feely, Simpleway.
Brian Holland with the Shared Use Mobility Center.
Mary Ferguson, Shared Use Mobility Center.
Maybe the Alex with Youth Policy Institute.
Philippe Kuzer, LA Mayor's Office.
Angela Vernon, LADOT.
Stuart County, LADOT.
Angela De La Rosa, LADOT.
Nora Frost, LADOT.
Oliver Hull, LADOT.
City Reese, LADOT.
Tim Black.
Nice, thank you. I also want to introduce a couple of other important folks. First in the front is John Ellis. He is a product manager for LADOT, and Gabe Klein, who is also assisting, partnering with us on the product manager scope of work. And then we have over here
Vladimir, New Mobility, LADOT.
Jana Smith, LADOT.
and then, yeah, Tom and Lon, tech. DOT. Okay, so first and foremost, just some logistics. So for a long, long time, we had an amazing contract administrator named Dick Wong. Some of you who worked with LADOT over the years probably knew him, and he helped lead the formation of this bench. But I need you all to update your Rolodexes and refocus your communications through Angela and Stuart. Angela and Stuart, can you wave your hand again, just in case we went through there. Angela is leading contracts and procurement oversight and administration for LADOT and is the main point of contact going forward. Although, Angela, that should be your LA City email, right? Not your Yahoo. I mean, I know that you... 24 hours. It's 24/7, this engagement. We don't play around. What happened, John Ellis?
Fixing it right now.
Okay. Tech, you guys. Tech. Nice. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to give some overall framing, and then John is going to spend the majority of the time here walking through some specific opportunities and really a different framework for how we are trying to build the infrastructure of the future and really transform into a 21st century Department of Transportation. But it's important to ground us in this, right? This is our vision from LADOT's strategic plan, and I'll just draw your attention to a couple of words in the vision statement. One, our vision statement is very much intentionally about equity, and here I mean racial and socioeconomic equity. When we talk about mobility, we are talking about economic mobility. We are talking about transportation's potential to either hold communities back and divide them, or lift them up and connect them to all of the things about cities that we love and that are critical. The way they connect people to opportunities, education, the way they connect us to each other. This is about social cohesion, it's about community happiness, and it's about that for everyone in Los Angeles. No matter where you live, no matter your background, no matter your race, none of that matters to us. What matters is the second word, that we treat everybody with dignity. So I manage a department that is extremely diverse. A lot of engineers whom I love. I'm sure many of you are engineers. It's okay, it's a safe space to be an engineer. I love engineers, but this word dignity is not something that you typically see in a transportation engineering framework. But for us, it is one of the most important underpinnings of the work we are doing. My friend Janet Marie Smith, who's from my hometown, Jackson, Mississippi, also happens to be the architect for Dodger Stadium, which is beautiful, was giving me a tour of all the things that she had done to the stadium. And she was showing me these tables that she had put in next to the children's play area. And they had mahogany finishes, and they had drink holders, and they had places to plug in your phone. I'm an Oakland A's and a Raiders fan, and I don't know if any of you have ever seen a game at the Concrete Palace in Oakland, but it is not designed to that level of beauty. And I said, Janet Marie, aren't you worried people are just going to trash this stuff? And she said, Salita, people rise to the level of dignity of design that you give them. So our job is to raise the level of dignity of design that we treat people with in this city. And that is the job and sort of one of the overall sort of North Stars and guiding lights for LADOT and for all of the work that we do. It's going to guide our investments, it's going to guide our choices, it's going to guide a very different way of thinking. So a lot of you are probably familiar with this document released in 2016. It lays out really a roadmap for us to usher in technology and transportation and to allow disruption and innovation without losing our values, right? Because the policy framework does not change just because the tech does. And the tech is only good for us if it advances our goals and moves us closer to these huge challenges that we are trying to overcome. A lot of things happened after we released this. We endeavored on a year-long sort of work to bring this bench to life, for one thing, because one of the tenets of this document is about changing and lowering the hurdles to partnership. And all of you know that one of the main hurdles to partnership inside city government is procurement. We are very lucky in LA where our problem is not finding money, it's spending money. And we knew that we could not do things the old way if we were hoping to catch up, keep up, and deliver on the promise of tech. So the idea of the bench is really that it shrinks the amount of time between when an idea or a project is a twinkle in somebody's eye and when we have one of you or your team under contract to deliver. It takes that from a 24-month endeavor to a 2-month endeavor. Right? And one of the first scopes that we awarded off of the bench was the product or project program manager scope of work. And this today is really us kicking off our sort of work in earnest around that product manager scope. We did some other things too. We launched first of its kind EV car sharing in a low-income community, Blue LA, was also a public-private partnership with a French firm, Bolloré, where they invested a tremendous amount in charging infrastructure, and the city came to the table with our investment to offset costs and fees that we would normally charge. But we also worked very intentionally with community-based organizations to create the actual RFP, to guide through that process, and to set up the program itself. Right? So this is really a very new model for us for how we deliver things, and we're very proud of the work that we did. We've also, we've got Metro Bike Share underway. We are moving to 100% EV procurement for all of our LADOT transit fleet in the future. So we've started to put things on the street that are different, that look different, and that come to life in a different way than we have in the past. But really, I want you to keep these images fixed in your mind. This is from our Play Streets program, right? And this is where we take a street that is normally open to cars, and we open it to people and play instead. And we went through a 2-year process to come up with the design of the actual parts and pieces, and we're now delivering 15 of these this year in park-poor neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles. This is about this is the promise of new mobility in my mind, is that we can do things like this at scale, because it is easy to close and open streets at the flip of a switch, and that it is easy to create things that are modular and replicable, and that are well designed, and that really work for everyone. I also will just say we are also thinking about urban aviation. And we are thinking very much about how we are going to design the cities of the future when there are going to be things flying overhead, fleets overhead, and fleets on the ground. Right? So we're trying to think about a different world, but we're keeping our eyes on this particular prize. And with that, I will turn it over to John.
Good morning.
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 How are y'all?
Good.
Good? Can you hear me? All right. Excellent. So, as Lee said, my name is John Ellis. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I'm joined by a number of folks who are part of the product management team for Transportation 2.0, Mobility 2.0, this newfangled construct that we're going to decompose a little bit today, walk through today, and invite you to participate in over the next number of years. Specifically, though, I'm joined today by a partner on the firm, Todd Peterson, earlier introduced as LADOT. We are all in, so we've got it tattooed on our bodies. We are LADOT. But both of us are entrepreneurs. We're both developers. He is a car guy. I'm not. But our backgrounds are in software, transportation, and creativity. And so we come to the arena from that. The team, though, then got added to help fill in some gaps. Very pleased to have partnered with Citify. Gabe Klein's in the audience somewhere. There he is. And his partner, Ashley Hand. And we've partnered then with a couple of other folks. Lantern Consulting, who introduced himself earlier for some culture stuff. We're going to talk through that a little bit here, because what you're about to see is a transformation that is going to be profound. Not just in the technology, but in the procedures and the processes and the way in which we engage. And so there's an incredible journey that we're going to have to take both internally and externally very broadly as we transform the culture of transportation. We're also then joined by a non-traditional communications PR firm who is a tech-focused PR firm. Part of the goal for LADOT, LADOT in the world of transportation is exceptionally well known. It's at the forefront of what it's done and what it's doing, especially under the stewardship of Selena. However, LADOT and the city of LA are not as well known in the technology community. And I mean the technology community not related to transportation. And so part of this journey over the next number of years is to bring to their eyes and mind exactly what's happening in LA, to celebrate it, to put it on the global stage, and to raise it to the level of dignity that it needs to have in the eyes of those who are building the technology of tomorrow. Okay? That's the team. A number of years ago, Anthony Fox, former Secretary of Transportation for President Obama, said not every innovation in transportation is going to come from government or even big enterprise. And what his idea was is that there is a world of innovation and creativity that we need to tap into. And that you're only going to tap into it if you can remove yourself from the framework of government or big government or even big enterprise. And that story starts on a journey where, yes, it starts from big government, but the lesson that was learned. And that journey starts in 1998. A little-known department in the Department of Defense called DARPA secured signature from President Clinton and released GPS to civilians. It made it open for the civilian community. And when asked why, the DARPA administrator said, "I don't know. It just seems like a really good idea." If we look 20 years later, we now see Google Fit. We see transportation network companies who've been built off of Google and Google Maps. We see the idea of Waze and communities offering how to get from point A to point B, building on top of maps and others. We see innovation today that comes from a decision 20 years ago based on the premise, I don't know, it just seemed like a good idea. So the takeaway that we're taking from that and bringing forward to this is the very bottom line. We are asking LA, and Salinas has endorsed this, we're asking LA and LADOT, don't imagine the future. Don't try and solve the future, enable it. Bring in and invite others to co-collaborate, co-develop, co-create with you on this journey. And imagine what you can see 20 years from now, 10 years from now in the 2028 Olympics. And so this journey that you're about to hear this morning is all predicated on this. Don't know, but it seems like a good idea. Okay, so Selena talked about the urban mobility document released in 2016. And some of you have heard, and it was discussed a little bit earlier, called the SIP, Strategic Implementation Plan. We're going to spend today talking about that plan. It was released, or is in the process of being released today. You're going to see it. It's available. It's a document for your consumption. It is not yet on the airways that I know about, but it is today. So you will see it today. For those of you online, I do apologize. I know we're trying to get the slides up. The recording will be made available so that you can see some of the stuff that's on the screen. But the journey to the SIP started with the urban mobility document. And basically what it was I authored it under a separate contract. And what we did as a team is we said, what are the essence of the document? What are the words of essence? What were the authors of that vision trying to take in 185 pages? And so we decomposed it into a word cloud to try and give us a sense for what were the words that were most important, what were the themes, what were the ideas. Simultaneous or shortly thereafter that document being released, NACDO, National Association of City Transportation Officials, released the blueprint for urban autonomy in an urban setting. And we did the same thing. What were the authors thinking? What were the key words? What were the key thoughts? Because again, you can talk to somebody, but it's only in understanding the words and the second layer of words that you truly get an essence and understanding of what is available. And with those two documents and sort of their decomposition, we began to explore how do we actually implement these incredible visions? How do we give guidance to people like you, companies like you, organizations like you, to make real the visions painted in 2016 and 2017. And so the document that we have done that with is called the Strategic Implementation Plan. It is released here, June 2018, and it details this journey. And the rest of this presentation this morning is about that and how to invite you in and the parts and places that you can play and participate with. And it starts here with the foundation. So for those of you who have, I won't ask you to raise your hands. I assume all hands would go up. But for those of you who have read the document, the urban mobility document, it is built on a foundation of pillars. And this is is a picture taken from that. The 5 pillars of a foundation of data: leverage technology design, partnerships for shared services, continuous improvement through feedback, and preparing for an automated future. And for those of you who are technical, it builds it nicely on a platform play, starting with, down at the very bottom, data as a service, infrastructure as a service, mobility as a service. Critically, however, what the document didn't do is explicitly point where and how we go do that. Where and how do we go build that? And so the strategic implementation plan takes that step. And it takes that step starting with the idea of we have existing projects within LADOT. Some of them you already know about, some you're going to hear about today. Coding the curb, mobility hubs, ATSAC 3.0, a number of different projects. So the idea is to take existing projects, coupled with the vision laid out in the urban mobility document, and to build them into and on a technology platform to really begin to construct the foundational elements needed to make that vision come true. In addition to the technology platform, we contemplate the fact that this thing that we're going to build is going to have to become self-sustaining in terms of the economics. Lots of different pressures are on play on our economic today. General revenues going down, gas taxes going down as electric usage goes up, and a general sort of issue with respect to tax base regardless. And so we're going to have to contemplate the business model and how we're going to deploy this in a way that is self-sustaining so that tomorrow's future is as good as it was today from 25 years ago. In addition to a business and a technology play, we have to be very concerned about risk management. We have to understand that as we begin to move this, much is going to change. From the standpoint of how we do it and what we do, much is going to change, excuse me. However, what's not going to change are the fundamental values that the city espouses. And so we're going to do all of this through an eye and a lens of equity, social, racial equity, income equity, as well as happiness equity. The general construct of you should be happy as you move through the LA transportation product from point A to point B. You should not be cursing. You should be celebrating. You should be enjoying. That is the level of dignity design that Salida was talking about. That is a challenge. That as engineers and designers, if we're given those constraints, we know we can reach them. So what this takeaway picture then goes down to is the following takeaway. This is the one that you're going to have some minds blown. But this is it. LADOT, the foundation is API access to all LADOT managed hardscape product. The idea being that we have a product, it's a platform, it's a transportation platform. As good product platform companies do, they enable it through APIs, data. The data itself is super interesting. More interesting is how you get into the system, how you behave in the system, how you interact with the system. So for those of you from technical companies, you're like, wow, cool, finally. For those of you from other companies, we're happy to talk a little bit more about this, but think broadly, this is enabling faster innovation than we've previously seen in the transportation arena. Now, how does that work? So innovation today in a city, any city, but specifically LA, starts like this. It's a small circle. LADOT has some internal developer resources, some internal constructs of people, and it has at its center ATSAC, that amazing, incredible network technology built again, I don't know, but it seems like a good idea, in 1982 and 83, deployed for the 84 Olympics. That is the heart and center and soul of LA, and that is the heart and center and soul of LADOT and innovation. And to augment what they do, they then bring in a small and select group of people, mostly informed from the automotive industry or real estate interest. What do we need to do? How much more concrete do we need to deploy? How much and how faster do we need to put cars through the intersection? Unfortunately, today, the mindset is, how do I move more, faster, through what I currently have, and what do I need to build to do that? And what we want to do, and what you heard from Salida, is that there needs to be a posture change. There needs to be a posture change in terms of what we're actually trying to accomplish, and there needs to be a process change in how we're going to do it. So that's innovation today. What SIP contemplates and what SIP is laying out in explicit detail is innovation tomorrow. And the idea of innovation tomorrow is, it's not this small pie. It's not this small group of people. It's not this small group of entities that historically work in transportation. Instead, it is a much bigger pie built up on 3 distinct sort of slices. And it starts with you all in the room today who are part of the bench, the technology bench. We envision the technology bench building the elements and the components that we're talking about today that are documented in the document. We envision the work being done to lay the groundwork and to build that which we identify as the LADOT technology platform. That is the role of the bench. That's what you're going to see. We're going to talk a little bit more in detail about the things that you're going to see and the TOSs that you're going to see over the next number of months and years. The next group of people is public-private partnership. The city has done amazing things with public-private partnerships. Lita talked about what's happening with Blue LA. She's talked about a number of other areas. The city is proud of its ability to reach out and work with private industry. It recognizes and acknowledges that private industry has a role to play in the defining of a transportation product. Not just showing up with a vehicle, like years past and saying, here you go, deal with it, but rather at the inception stage, I'm contemplating doing something. What could it look like for you and how might it help you? So as we talk to companies that are doing drones, or we talk about air service or air taxi, how does product and service get reconceptualized from the ground up through the lens of a city's needs, as opposed to the product company just trying to satisfy shareholders and a board? We're calling that the public-private partnership. And then the third area is the idea of Anthony Fox. It's the idea of, I don't know, but it seems like a good idea. It's the idea of saying, listen, we don't have all the answers. We don't necessarily know what the future looks like. So instead of trying to figure that out, we're going to enable it. And we're going to invite companies from around the world, from around the globe that are, regardless of their background, to come and innovate with the city of LA and with LADOT. For those of you in the technology arena, contemplate third-party developer programs. Contemplate the idea of, I build something and I welcome others to come and build their own businesses, their own revenue streams, their own profit streams on top of and integrated into. And that's a flavor of what we're looking at. Innovation tomorrow is the equal balance between the bench building platform, public-private partnership enabling policy, discussion, direction, and then the massive and creative crowdsourced innovation that comes when you open up and welcome innovation. Now, today, the process that we have kind of looks like this. And so I want to go through this a little bit because we're going to show you where we're going to change things, where we're going to tweak things, where in some cases we might break things and try and rebuild them. And the process should be very familiar for those of you who have done any kind of city work or even federal government work for that matter. It starts with third-party constructs. We have a goal. We want to put a new lane in, or we want to do something different. And so we go off and we procure third-party research. The researchers are told in excruciating detail what we're looking for. Policies and procedures are written to guide that researcher as he pulls or she pulls data in. Data is collected, data is put together, and a report is generated as to, okay, here's what we found. Then a procurement cycle goes through to go, can we analyze that? Can we look at that? Can we decompose it? Can we figure out whether or not it's right, we need to put another lane in, or you know what, the data suggests it's not another lane, it's bike share or something else. But again, it's another process of procurement, publication, and analysis. And then finally, we can finally get to bidding out to build. And the process creates itself and it repeats itself. And what is key and constructively to understand is this is measured in years. It's measured in years. For those of you in the technology world, some of this is best thought through in terms of a control loop. So this is the city of, any city really, we're using LA though, control loop for innovation. It starts with, the public has a perception of what's going on. Traffic is too long. That stoplight is taking too long. There's too much traffic, there's too much congestion, there's too much of something. No one ever says, I have too much happiness, or I'm not happy, but they express it in some other term. And so we respond to that. Oh wow, we need to put more cars out. We need to figure out how to do something. And so public perception comes into it. And then we turn around and we say, well, what's really the issue? So government starts getting involved, and government looks at that, and government studies it. And then government makes a decision about hardscape decisions. That might be new stoplights, it might be changing the timing of stoplights, it may be new roads, it may be new lanes, it may be new bike, it may be something, but it's a hardscape decision. Something changes in our transportation product based on the inputs we received. And then we get hired companies to go off and build it, or to go and analyze that which was built, and to go study it. Did it hit the goals? Did it achieve it? Did we hit all the marks? Did the KPIs work? Do we pay the bonuses? Do we pay a penalty? Where are we at in the system? And then from there we go back and we hire universities and consultants and say, go measure this. Go put up the report, go look at this, go publish this, go tell us what's going on, and feed that back into our sort of controlled decision point. And then let's repeat the process again, and again, and again. And from 1910, when the very first stop sign was put in, to today, we have the system we have because of this, measured in years. Yet tomorrow, when we have the conceptualized types of transportation that we're talking about, this is absolutely inefficient. And it will not serve the purposes of LA or any city for that matter. And so what we instead conceptualize is a future innovation control loop, measured in seconds, where the governance comes in, but that the governance is done outside, where we're talking about control and active management of what's happening on the transportation product. That as that management and control is happening, that we're seeing what's going on in real time, that we're looking at traffic, that we're looking at movement real time, and trying to understand what needs to happen to make sure that we optimize with an eye towards equity. What is the right thing to do at this precise moment, guided by inputs from governance that were taken previously. And as we're seeing the system and measuring the system, we go back and, again, people are talking about smart cities. We're talking about enabling the transportation product that is the heart and soul of the city of LA, and making it a modern day product in terms of the definition that we in the technology world would use as a product, hardware and software. And those real-time sensors and data are then taken in, and we begin to observe, and we begin to look, and we begin to understand, and we begin to play out against our filter of the business model. What are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to move more people efficiently because a Dodger Stadium game is over, so we're going to restructure streets for a period of time? Are we talking about offering the opportunity to go from point A to point B in a happiness metric? You want to and choose, you don't care about time, you do want to get there safely, but you're okay that a route that's being given to you, or the idea that's being given to you, takes you through the wonderfulness of that is the city of LA. These are the things that are at our disposal in the future, if in fact we can just turn our perspective slightly different and think that, I don't know, but it sounds like a good idea. So now, taking these constructs of the control loop, where do we go with that? What actually does LADOT do? And what do you do, and what's your role? This is the LADOT Innovation Process in a graphic. Again, I would encourage you to go back to the SIP. It's written also in words, additional more pictures, graphics, and examples to give you a sort of sense of what's going on. But the innovation process for LADOT starts with this. The idea of a developer program or developer, the idea that there are people building, you're developing. Whether you're developing software, whether you're developing hardware, you're building, innovating, and developing something. And we're going to contemplate how we engage with you at that co-collaboration stage. What are the tools you need from LADOT and the city of LA to be able to build product for tomorrow? What are the things you're going to need in terms of APIs? But what are you going to need in terms of hardware design or design guidelines? What are those things that you need to build product that works seamlessly and wonderfully and rises to that dignity level that Salita talked about for the city of LA? We're talking about public-private partnerships, to incubate the idea of public and private partnerships, the idea of how do we get public and private partnerships to work, to understand what's happening, to incubate the idea of, hey, how do we co-collaborate in a way that basically companies and cities have never done before? How do we do that? And then last but not least, what do we do in terms of the bench? How do we bring the bench in? That's the fundamental essence. You are the extended development team of LADOT to build and deliver the technology platform. That's the foundation. We will be doing things where we release, you'll see here shortly, regularly, where third-party product companies around the world build and deliver products and services. They're going to take as input that which LADOT gives out. And they're going to begin to build and develop the companies that we know and love and companies that don't even exist yet today. Building and developing and delivering on top of the lens and product and view and dignity statements that LADOT make. These products will get released. They'll get released into the city. And the city, on the second-by-second controller, will begin to evaluate. How are they? What's happening? Do we need to change rules? Do we need to change APIs? Do we need to extend them? What do we learn month to month, week to week, as these products and services are deployed into the city? How do we ensure that our North Star is continually in our forward-looking view and not in our rear view? And what we learn from that then informs that which we're building and extending. It becomes a very circuitous and very circular loop, a virtuous loop, constantly focused on the North Star of dignity, delivering innovation at speeds unheard of in a city context. That is the money slide. That's what we're doing, and that's what the SIP talks about. Now, where this happens and how this happens is you'll see here, we're going to be releasing quarterly. We're going to, the city has agreed, we're going to get into this construct of constantly updating and delivering, of delivering innovation elements to enable you and others to achieve greatness on a quarter-by-quarter basis. To that end, this session that we're doing today, we are envisioning doing this again every quarter as we release a new version of the SIP. As we release new information out, we're looking to do the elements of outreach and communication so that you and others know what's available in the next iteration of product design. Now, when we talk about that, what really are we talking about? That bottom piece is right here, the LADOT Innovation Program. And there's a number of different elements to it that you're going to see. So for those of you who come from the technology background, these are going to be very, very known to you. The idea of building, making, right? LADOT is going to take this new posture that Celine alluded to, and we're going to make sure that we have the people and the opportunities available to build stuff. We have builders who know how to build and who can communicate to you what is it in the technology and the terms that you need to be able to build, to be able to make stuff. We then have the idea of if you build it and make it, you still need to then sell it. You still need to be a business. So how do we help and understand and deliver the idea of the fact that LADOT is a place, and LA is a place for businesses to come, develop product, and release it. We're going to talk about marketing and outreach constantly. And then next up, we have the idea of being able to help. Hey, I don't understand. You know, this is different than what I've done in the past. How do I do A, B, or C? So these elements of the program are going to be established. Again, you have to draw your attention to the SIP and where the SIP talks about this. But if you come from a technology background, this mindset and this construct should be very, very similar. So we actually not just released a SIP and not just released a process, we have already started down this path. Last 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we released the very first ever, I'll say, product through this process. For those of you that were involved or are involved or know anything about the on-demand mobility arena, the city of LA is contemplating how to make on-demand mobility available properly in the city. By idea of dockless bikes or dockless scooters, etc. And so as part of that process, to help deliver that, to help enable that conversation, we delivered the very first ever artifact out of this process called the Mobility Data Specification, MDS. What is so interesting about this, if you're in the audience, you're like, oh, that's just another spec. What's different? It's a couple things. Number one, it was built and delivered in Git. So for those of you who come from a tech community, it is Git. If you know how to use GitHub, you know how to use Git, that's what this is. I leave the address up there for you. Feel free to go. Branch pull. Send us pull requests. We are actively doing this. What we did is we developed in public a specification technically for how companies can begin to contemplate integration in terms of APIs and data. Cities are aware of this now. The companies are aware of this. The response has been nothing short of pretty phenomenal. Most of them started with a posture of, oh, this is just LA putting out a document, until they began to realize it was truly, it's developed in Git, it's built up, you can comment on it, you can write on it, you can pull it, branch it, the whole 9 yards. And so again, the posture of the city changing through behavioral example. That's today, and it will continue to evolve as the city evolves on its position for putting in and making available on-demand mobility. But there is today, and then there's this sort of, what next? What's over the short term? The idea in the short term is this idea of managing the curb space. For those of you who are actively involved with the city, you'll have heard of a project called Coding the Curb. This is that construct. How do we take an asset, a physical asset? Selena constantly talks about probably the most prized asset that the city has at its disposal is the physical aspect. So how do we take that, the curb, and manage it? And actively manage it in an arena and in a posture that is modern day, that is digitally enabled. So how do we do that? And so you're going to start seeing, you'll see it called out as a TOS. You're going to start seeing elements of a TOS starting to show up, or multiple TOSs, as we begin to decompose and deconstruct. What does it mean? What do we really need to do in order to code the curb, in order to manage the curbs of LA in a manner that is behooved to sort of the technology arena, while still, again, keeping that construct of equity in mind. And then sort of longer term, as we begin to contemplate management, for those of you who are in the technical world, you can contemplate, well, can we actually get to a level where we're really managing or guiding all the movement within the city? All the movement of vehicles or objects, whether they're in the air or on the ground. And so we could contemplate the beginning of the idea that LA says, yes, we can. And to the willingness, if you're willing to accept it, AV companies, drones, and others, what we're going to do is help you move from point A to point B in a way that makes use of the product as balanced and useful as possible through the eyes of its citizens. So the idea of managing routes, of being able to deliver how to get from point A to point B in a way and measured against something else besides whatever a private company might say. It might be transportation happiness. It might be racial social equity. It may be risk management. It doesn't matter. The point being is that the city potentially has the ability to bring forward how to move from point A to point B in a way that is good for all. Next up, we have the idea, so that's technical product. We're also contemplating service product, the ability to deliver services on top of this digitally enabled platform. And there are three that you're going to see in the next couple of months popping up. I don't want to put out a schedule because we're not yet sure when they will actually fall, but they're going to fall out in the next couple of months. And the first one has to do with accessibility. And this is the idea of being able to bring together services, mobility services, to bring kids to parks, to beaches, to allow people to transit through our gorgeous city, but who can't do it today, either for lack of access to a car, lack of access to public transport, or inability to cross an expressway. Whatever it might be, whatever the reason might be, we want to solve for and deliver accessibility at rates and opportunities unheard of, rising to the dignity of the human being. Next up is the idea of equity and transparency. And this is the idea of delivering the opportunities of all types of movement that are based in and grounded in our Move in the Mayor's vision for an energy efficient and all-electric future, but at the same time provides opportunities for every Angelino and every visitor to Los Angeles so that they can move from point A to point B in a state of happiness, as opposed to a state of four-letter words. And then the last one is reliability. And in this, we're contemplating an AV or an autonomous vehicle sort of transit system, a route, if you will. For those of you who've been to other cities, you see the deployment of mini shuttles and services down fixed routes. So the construct here is, can we begin to enable and envision the building blocks to that? And then can we begin to, with an eye toward that service, begin to deploy that in and on the streets of LA, or in and over the streets of LA as we contemplate the movement of objects in the air. So we have three technical element building programs that are going to be coming here shortly. We have three service-based. When you go to the SIP, you'll find out that there's a lot more. The SIP contemplates something on the order of 20 to 22 technical elements needed, and it contemplates on the order of about 10 to 12 services. We called out three as examples to sort of show you and highlight for you where we are and where the thinking is. So again, I would encourage you, when you read, go back to the SIP, there's an appendixes A and B, or appendices A and B. All right. Now, all of this transformation is going to be profound. It's going to be incredible, and it's going to be an incredible journey. But as the city has learned in its introduction of play streets, of electrification, of movement, it doesn't happen without incredible amounts of communication, without incredible amounts of give and take and understanding. And so we're going to see not just a new word like dignity, as Lita called out. I can yet not find in my entire 29, 28, whatever the number is, years of working as an engineer, I cannot find the word culture in any document I ever received. And yet, equal to dignity is going to be this construct of culture. This construct that as human beings and as organizations, we have a movement, almost like through the grief process. We have a movement where we're going to move from where we are today to something different. And that is scary. And so there is a construct or a phrase, change management is pain management. Part of what we're talking about in this is, in order for the technology to be successful, in order for this vision to be realized, in order for us to be able to sit here 10 years from now and look back and say, I was there when it started and I can see the wonderfulness and the ability in the 2020 Olympics, we have to recognize and understand that people and companies and organizations have to move from point A to point B. And so very explicitly for our community-based organizations in the room and on the phone, and for those who are watching the video later couldn't make it, this is going to be the call out for your participation. This is going to be the call out saying, will you stand up with us and help us bring the messaging, form the messaging, deliver the messaging to all the stakeholders. This is going to be from the politician to the engineer, to the citizen, to the companies. The construct is we're all in this together, and we all have to move from a point A to a point B. And so our call and our invitation to CBOs specifically is, will you join us and will you help us? Now, I talked about a schedule. This is in the SIP, and which is going to be online. This is just to point out to you that for the next year, we have pretty much programmed the construct of delivering and developing to deliver to you and to deliver to others this technology platform and the elements thereof. Very specifically up on top is this idea of, for those of you who received the program management task order, you'll note that there were a number of different tasks. So as to be consistent, we are showing the schedule using the same nomenclature. However, online is a little bit cleaner. But the idea is task 0, the technical elements that are, in fact, the product and the program. And task 1, which is the existing projects. And then task 2 is SIP execution. Task 3 is partnership development and outreach. Task 4 is sort of advising and advisory work to the city. And then task 5 was to be in LA, to be available in LA for those companies and those folks wanting to talk and integrate with the team. So task 0, task 1, and task 2, you're going to start seeing right up here in good form and fashion, quarterly releases. We're already committed. We've already built a plan. You're going to start seeing us on tools and others. We're starting to get to automatic releases. And we're talking about the content now. And as those releases happen, we're looking at making sure whatever the content is holistic and moves you a little bit more forward and northbound. And so every quarter from this point forward, you're going to see a full release of some kind. It might be just the SIP updated, it might be the SIP with a few TOSs, it might be the SIP TOSs and API definition, it might be an update to the MDS, it might be something new. The point is, every quarter, on the quarter, you're going to see and realize an update that moves the entire program forward, makes available a little bit more information, a little bit more technology, offers and invites you to come in and participate and develop, and then offers our organizations, our community-based organizations, additional talking points, opportunities to come in and help us form the messaging as we move forward. Everything is centered around these quarterly technical releases. What's super interesting as well is down here under the task 3, partnership and sort of outreach. As I mentioned before, LADOT and the city of LA are super well known in the world of transportation and cities. There's not a city in the world that doesn't know who LA is, and not a transportation organization or company in the world that doesn't know who LADOT is. However, the future of innovation is not just in the transportation field. And so the goal is to get LADOT as equally known in other areas and in other world stages. So you're going to start seeing folks from LADOT speaking at shows like Mobile World Congress, Americas, where Salida has the opening keynote. You're going to see it happened last year at LA Commotion, you're going to see it again. You're going to see it at CES, you're going to see it at Mobile World Congress. You're going to see LADOT and the story that we're talking about in a way and in a fashion that the city has never had before, or the luxury before. And you're going to see it presented in a way where we're inviting more collaboration, more innovation, showing the world why LA and LADOT should be the epicenter of any product design cycle. Now, how we're going to do all this and where we invite you in and how we manage this, at the end of the day, I mean, there is a guiding North Star. Salida has a vision. Her team has bought into that vision, and Salida's North Star is absolutely at the forefront of where we're going. But at the end of the day, we are going to be bringing together a lot of technology folks, a lot of folks with opinions. And so we're putting in together a process to make sure that we can deliver on a regular basis and remain transparent on a regular basis to you and to others as to how we're building what we're building. And for those of you who come from the technology arena, it's a stage gate process. LADOT will be identifying the stakeholders, but literally at every step of the evolution, at every point as we evolve, stakeholder involvement tells us, can we move forward? Are we still adhering to that North Star? This is both in part for auditing purposes, that at any given time the city can say, yes, this is why we did it, this is how we did it, this is where we're at. But it's also for transparency to you, the group of people that we're asking to join us on this journey. If you don't trust that the journey is going to be fruitful, if you don't trust that the outcome of the journey is in your best interest, then you're never going to give us your best. And so this is in part to make sure that you understand that there is a role to play, but more importantly that you're being actively asked to participate and to opine and to give the opinion in a manner and in a way that allows us to all move forward. Now, Megan Smith, previously from Google, spent some time with Barack Obama's presidency, and she's quoted as saying, I think it's more APIs than RFPs. And I want to close with that statement. The world we're in historically has been we issue RFPs, a few people respond, and based on, I don't know, something, do you have your disclaimer on Iran? Do you have your disclaimer on diamonds? Do you have your disclaimer on slaves? Whatever the procurement disclaimers are. Then we evaluate you for money, and we figure out who can become the fulfiller of that. In this new world, we're not talking about procurement so much as we're talking about partnership. There will still be a role for procurement. We're not dismissing that. But procurement happens later in the process. Before that is opportunity for collaboration, innovation. I don't know why I'm doing it. It just seems like a good idea. What could be the output? And so those closing words to you are, today, moving forward, when you come to LA, when you come to LADOT, don't come and say, how can I help? Instead say, I've seen the program, I'm actively building in the program, I've got a cool idea, I want to show it to you, it advances the program and it advances others. Can I get some time on your calendar? That's the future. Build, develop, come to us and show us and integrate with us. Please don't say, how can I help? With that, I'm going to pass it over to Marcel to talk about a few more opportunities, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. Thank you very much.
Morning, everybody. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for putting me after Salida Reynolds and John Ellis. I really appreciate it, so try not to fall asleep. I don't know a lot of people here, but I do know a lot of people here. So I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for LADOT, and what's been really exciting about my work is that after coming in a couple of years ago, we were able to really put together a team that cut across different mobility services that we're looking at delivering, including taxis, bike sharing, car sharing. We really did a lot of work around incubating the original part of the work that was a handoff from the work that Ashley Hand did from City5, along with Salida, and now we're kind of this bridge. And so one project I wanted to talk about really quickly is a Mobility Hubs project. It is one of these legacy projects that we've been really trying to launch for a while now. But every time that we're about to take another step, like a problem gets solved that we were trying to fix. So originally when we were looking at Mobility Hubs, we were thinking about doing these like bikes that existed in France. Now we have bike share. Same thing with car share. We now have multiple players in the space around car sharing that exists, but even more so now, there are even new mobility services like on-demand transit. I think more and more we're at a place right now where we can really look at delivering these suite of services through like a mobility as a services approach. So geographically, there are 13 mobility hubs that we are going to be able to fund. 10 of them are in the city of Los Angeles, 3 of them are in Long Beach, 5 of them are in downtown, and 5 are in Hollywood on the city of LA side. The project of the vision really is around connecting first and last mile. The funding source is federal funding source through the Job Access Reverse Commute. So there is a real emphasis on connecting low-income job seekers to their first and last mile trips. And so that is really interesting for us because, as many of us know, equity and connecting the first mile, last mile has been something that I think nationally we're still really trying to learn from and struggling with in terms of how do we actually connect those, particularly as the mobility marketplace is exploding with more private options. So the purpose of the project is to enhance the access of low-income individuals and welfare recipients to employment centers, job training sites, community colleges, and other educational facilities. So as I mentioned, what's in a mobility hub? Bicycle parking, access to rail, access to buses, bike sharing, interactive kiosks, which again, it's one of those things that's being solved for as we speak. The convention center is actively involved in bringing interactive kiosks, and Metro is also spending a lot of time on interactive kiosks as well. And then I think the other thing too that we as the city invested in previously, working through the mayor's office and with Conduent, formerly Xerox, looking at the Go LA app. And we think that was a lot of good learnings, but I think really building off of the Go LA app is another opportunity that we see, or a different iteration of that as well. So there are 2 components basically of the projects. It's the actual physical component and looking at the hubs themselves. And so what is the experience for passengers arriving and departing from these mobility hubs? And then what's the technological component of that as well? I think one of the things we really, Salita and I talked about, was really wanting to start sharing kind of a real tangible opportunity here, because this is the type of project that is, going to require a strong team. And I think because we're also doing this work around transportation happiness, that really was one of the foundational things that we thought about in the tech strategy, is we really want to look at this program through the lens of transportation happiness. Previously, and what we talk about all the time, the way our taxi group stored data was we got a CD-ROM, we pumped it into an access database, we did some reports, and I think in the new platform that we're looking at creating like uniformity across the way we gather and evaluate data across our department, from bike share to transit to taxis to experiences walking and biking as well. And so this is going to be the foundation. This is going to be something that continues to evolve. Through working with the city council, we've already shared and built this off of work that we did with our commissioners and the Taxi and Transportation Commission, as well as some early workshops. This will also be released today with the SIP, and attached to this, there's a second page that really looks into key performance indicators to really try to quantify this. And so as you're looking at the SIP opportunities, I think this is an important document to look at, because this is the way we're thinking about delivering mobility services as well. So again, there is money behind this, and so we have between $8 and $9 million for this project. It's not going to just be the building of the hubs themselves, but there's also going to be service delivery for 3 years that's expected as well. And so I think the thing that we learned, and we did a little bit of a workshop. One of the partners here, Mike and Jack, were definitely involved in helping us to think about what is the interaction between the physical space and the passenger. And so we really want help in helping to articulate what does that look like, because each mobility hub is going to be different. The experience at Pershing Square and leveraging the Renew Pershing Square initiative is going to be different than the one at Hollywood and Vine, or the one at Vermont and Hollywood, right, where there's a medical center. And so really looking at how do we engage, are we bringing the children's hospital into the table to see what is the experience here for folks arriving and leaving, and how do we create a context-sensitive design. And I think we've seen a lot of that through some really great examples in the work we've done with Vision Zero and looking at planning our corridors. I think we're really excited about the lessons learned from there and really bringing on and developing this community-based organization side of the bench, because it's going to allow non-traditional partnerships to form. And so I would encourage everyone here who hasn't looked at the list thoroughly to start looking at that and seeing how you can partner and get to meet through coffees or happy hours the different organizations on that, because I think it's really going to be important that we roll that out in that way. So again, just as Salita had mentioned previously, this is the goal, right? It's creating places and opportunity for people with outcomes, equity outcomes, with transportation happiness outcomes as well. So again, we're looking at releasing the RFP in the fall. I mean, maybe we'll have solved everything and then maybe we'll just push it back again, I don't know, but so just kidding, just kidding. And I also want to give a special shout out to Robin Aksu. If you can raise your hand, Robin is our Mobility Hubs program manager and has been engaging lots of folks in our department, but then as well externally as well. And so she's really going to be the point leading this. So I want to thank Robin for helping me put this presentation together. That's it.
All right, so we promised you, actually Salita sort of alluded to a whirlwind. This was a whirlwind hour and 15 minutes of information. So it is to be expected that maybe you don't have a single comment other than, wow. However, I saw a lot of people taking notes, so it's very likely that you do have questions. So for the next half hour or so, or until you all decide you want to go and leave here, we're open for questions. I'll take front lead, but if there are questions then for Marcel or for Salita or anyone else on the team, by all means, we can answer. But go ahead, raise your hand. You don't have to repeat who you are, but go ahead and raise your hand, ask a question, and we'll try and do our best to answer them. Yes, sir.
Out of curiosity, what kind of groundwork, if you will, communication has been done with other departments within the city?
So the question is, out of curiosity, what groundwork in terms of cross-agency communication has been accomplished within LA? Do you want to take that, Salita?
So the city, it's a good question. So the city put together a cross-agency AV working group about 6 months or so ago. That working group has convened 2 or 3 times to start talking about and thinking about how the city workforce prepares for disruption of mobility and how the city workforce may incorporate autonomy or shared mobility into the way that we actually deliver citywide services. The bench itself is open for any city department that wants to use it, and actually the Bureau of Street Services has already requested to use our bench for a task force solicitation that they are going to put out. So those are the and then the third thing I'll point to is there is an established coalition for transportation technology that includes representation from Caltrans, Metro, the county, LADOT, Marcel, am I missing anybody? Oh, and SCAG, that meets on a regular basis. And so they're also, this is the forum where we bring and share, proliferate information about what we're doing. My intent is that if and when we push task orders out to the bench, where we can, we want to try and include a piggybacking clause in those contracts. So that through the NACTO network, so I'm the president of the National Association of City Transportation Officials, 64 of the biggest American cities and transit agencies, along with some from Canada and Mexico, that any of those cities can use the same contract that we use if their states allow piggybacking. So the idea is we're trying to build something that is replicable and a resource that's also widely available across the city of LA, but that can also be a place where we co-create with other cities. And that's why when John talked about the blueprint for autonomous urbanism, that's a really important building block that we are very intentionally trying to grow through a network of thinking and foundation from city DOTs across the US.
So we're going to pass the mic around. By repeating the question, well, good. We're trying to get it on the film. I forgot we're filming, so.
Thank you. John, you mentioned about you're very open to hearing about innovation, new ideas, new IP, deployments, and you're looking to the bench to bring those ideas to you. What is that mechanism? What's the process? I'm sure many of us here are ready to go, but how are you going to manage that process and communicate it to the bench?
It's a three-part process. Today, so as part of the invitation to join today, you were also invited to, on a first-come, first-served basis, take advantage of some interviews or some presentation seats over the next couple of days with Salida and the team. Every time we do this, we're anticipating something similar to that, so that ongoing sort of engagement. Secondly, through the example of MDS, and I'll use that very specifically, the mobility data specification, we have been actively collaborating with people from around the world. This has been published, this is out, we're getting inbound requests, we're getting notes, we're getting comments. In some cases, we've jumped on a phone call to ask. So for those of you who do either software development or distributed development, a lot of the same kinds of tools and sort of innovation opportunities from around that mechanism. And then the third one that's probably very, very specific to the bench and sort of the engagement here is going to be through the TOS process. So the TOS is going to certainly identify certain things, but there will probably be an opportunity on the TOS response to come back and say, great, I get what you're trying to do. Can I also add the following? Or can I also suggest the following? Or can I also extend the following? Keeping in mind the North Star process. Again, that's today, day one. This is a 3-year journey or 2.5-year journey based on the bench contract time. Probably going to change. Probably going to figure out that it works in some areas, not in other, and then we'll figure out how to address it. If there's an exit mechanism, it's literally LADOT_innovation. So if there's something that's not happening, by all means hit that right now, and it's being actively monitored by the team outside of just the procedural contract basis.
Alan Clown was in delight. I may be oversimplifying this, but there seemed to be the focus of the bench to build the platform. And you had that circle with the bench, the public-private partnerships, and other companies on the right-hand side.
Keep going.
Could I offer that it would be, would it be appropriate to consider that less a pie and more a Venn diagram, where the firms and the organizations involved in the bench could also transfer to public-private partnerships?
Absolutely, yeah. No, apologies for the graphic. Obviously we can fix that moving forward. I should have probably put that, and it is written actually in the SIP. Membership is not exclusive. You can be a third party who then chooses as a company to try and enter into a public-private partnership. However, there is today the limitation that you can't join the bench after the bench was formed, right? That's a city law. The bench is formed and is open for expansion. But that doesn't mean that people who are in the bench area can't go to public-private partnerships, can't be on the third party, none of that. So you're absolutely right. So I apologize for this. It's in the document, but we'll clarify that also in any written comments, that it is absolutely meant to be open on all ends.
Hey, John, you could be a company and you could show up in all 3 of those buckets, right?
Yes, but you would have had to have started here first because you have to be on the bench. But yes, a bench company, Ford, can be here and can be here simultaneously. Absolutely, correct. I think there's another hand over here first. Get you down there.
Yeah. And also you should add companies that are not on the bench can sub to any company on the bench.
Oh, sorry, yes, a very good point. So if you're not on the bench and you are here today, or you're listening in on the video recording afterwards, if you're not on the bench, not all is lost. Absolutely, you are able to partner and deliver to the city. It just must be through a subcontract relationship with somebody on the bench. So we're not trying to limit innovation, but the procurement law that allowed Salida to take this big step forward had a limitation on the bench and its membership, and it had a date that it had to close by, and that date has to still be respected. But other than that, this is an opportunity to try and figure out how we make and build the coolest stuff possible to make LA the coolest place in the world.
Hi, Rick Azer with Black & Deach. Appreciate being able to be here today.
you mentioned in your presentation about collaboration, and I'm curious what steps may be taken to promote more interaction between the companies that are on the bench and here today, particularly with large companies like ourselves and smaller companies that are presumably more innovative.
So I'm immediately reminded that I'm wearing a filter of LADOT in the city, because my normal reaction would have been something completely different. It would have involved parties and networking and social events and all sorts of good stuff. So if you go through this elements of a good program piece right here, all of this part here, there is a role. That's where that role plays. Salida was pushing hard for this date. In fact, if she could have had it, it would have been a couple months earlier. The processes were what they were because of the acknowledgement that a number of you took a big leap to join the bench. A number of you went through arduous steps to join, and then you're in some sense isolated. And so how do we fix that? How do we make that happen? It's an acknowledgement. We are acknowledging here now that we have to figure that out. Again, my normal procedures and processes would have been to do something like that. Invite, socialize, network, allow for the cross-collaboration, have that happen. In the absence of the ability to do that under certain rules, we're going to see if we can't facilitate it digitally or electronically. I don't yet know how it works out, but it is acknowledged, though, that there are many on this bench who don't know each other, especially because we're mixing all of these different organizations. So we acknowledge it. Going to be probably one of the first things we fix. We're going to try and address it. It's not fixable. It's going to be evolving always, and we'll see where we go. So what I'd love to see is in 3 months from now, come back and see if we've made any progress. If we haven't, hold us to it and see how we move forward. The next,
Yeah, sure.
You're good there. Okay, I think there was quite a couple questions in the back.
Hi.
Yep, sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Noam from Waycare. And I guess coming from a perspective of a startup, one of the things you spoke about, a new model of iteration quickly on innovation. I'm curious also in terms of what's your thoughts on how to build this in a methodical way of thinking of learning from not just successes, but also failures and rapidly adjusting accordingly as you go?
Yeah, so I want to answer that and synthesize something that Salida pointed out to me. The idea of the graphic here, again, keeping in mind the idea of a Venn diagram, as pointed out. The idea of, for those of you in the development arena, if you know what a third-party developer program is, right? People who build product have come to realize that they can't always understand what their customers want, but they can enable others to build meaningful experiences and deliver that. And so that's where the city of LA wants to try and, ultimately kind of, using that lens, look to, trying to challenge itself, improve the processes that are in place, break some that are there, and rebuild them again for this digital transformation. And so anybody can really engage with the city. And so we have a challenge in trying to make sure how does the anybody meet the established? How do the established meet the anybody? How do we cross-contaminate, cross-pollinate? How do we do that in a way that delivers that? And so I use that as the backdrop because right now we were saying we're pretty comfortable. We can say on a quarterly basis and create documents, create updates, create releases to websites. Create and deliver at a cadence that shows that we're alive, that things are happening, and that invite collaboration. It may turn out that the quarterly concept is only appropriate for big elements, the SIP, platform stuff, maybe API stuff, I don't know yet. But that the ongoing debate and dialogue, whether it's blog, writing, engagement, an IRC channel, God forbid if they've got to do a Slacker channel, but a Slacker channel. I can't believe I said that I'm being recorded. Love Slacker, it's a great company. Prefer IRC though, I'm much more of an open source guy. Whatever those mechanisms are, right? Communication is part of it. And so again, to the CBOs, we were talking about communication, which is that broad. We're also knowing that we, the team, have to talk to you. Like, what are we doing? Where are we at? How do we invite you? And so the whole messaging is going to center around Salida and sort of her tech presence on stage. As we see ramp-ups to big shows, what are we going to be doing? What can we do in messaging? How do we engage with you? How do we take the excitement, bring people back in, do cross-pollination? How do we make that become virtuous? Again, quarterly, maybe just the big stuff, but ongoing. So again, challenge us in 3 months or challenge us live on LADOT Innovation. If you're not seeing something, if you're not feeling that love, come back to us and offer suggestions. Okay?
So how about the LinkedIn group?
How about a LinkedIn group?
When you run the...
All right, so how about a LinkedIn group?
GM hates LinkedIn.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Go ahead and you can...
Well, my name is Sash Raj from DS Apps.
Yep.
So, in terms of communication, it's always a question of how we communicate to you and to the others. And LinkedIn is a great, it's one platform.
Yeah. There are lots of tools at our disposal. There are Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups. We can tweet, we can post, we are still working through the right actual mechanism. I guess the point is that there is going to be the traditional in terms of developer types of communications and policies, procedures, and others, and then there's going to be the more traditional city type of communication. We're going to try and blend them in a way that shows advancement. So again, we'll work through it, taking that suggestion, LinkedIn, others we'll come back to. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, Tyler Peterson with the Center for Sustainable Energy. I have two questions. So the first is, you mentioned that LADOT will be working with the private sector on developing products. So I was wondering, what's LADOT's position on intellectual property, and will there be an expectation of ownership or royalties from those products? And then second, what type of measurement or evaluation tactics or standards will be used to the metrics of happiness, and then the criteria you laid out for the mobility bill of rights?
The last one's easy. The metric of happiness is Selena happy? That's simple. Easily done. Check the box. No, I'm kidding. No, so on the last one, let's use the on-demand mobility documentation and process we just went through. One of the requirements for operating in this new arena is an integrated survey mechanism that is shared with the city. The details, the actual logistical implementation details, are being worked out now. But the philosophy, the vision, is that those who use the platform can immediately give feedback on the experience of using it. If something's not living up to your definition or level of dignity, you should be able to communicate it and know that A, it was heard, and B, it's going to be actioned. So from that standpoint, that's partly policy, but there's also some technical stuff behind the scenes to make the companies be able to integrate it in a way that we can measure that.
Can I ask that? So part of what Ashley Hand's document, the Urban Mobility and Digital Age, envisions is that infrastructure, digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure, becomes a source of constant feedback and information between the city and the people who are using it. The infrastructure, in order for us to figure out how to better deliver and deploy services, and also how to improve the experience. So, Marcel's team is tasked with, you saw that mobility bill of rights and also the transportation happiness, and we're trying to operationalize that and come up with key performance indicators, baseline across all modes, and then, figure out how are we going to crowdsource feedback and information about how well we're doing along those key performance indicators. So it isn't, transportation happiness is our way of talking about user experience. For us, that was too much Google and not enough government. So, and also we're on the West Coast, Best Coast, so we put transportation happiness in there as what we want to measure against. But we take it very seriously, and we are trying to make it real and concrete and measure it. And I'll let you answer the first question.
Yep. So the first question on intellectual property. This is going to be, it's a new arena, but it's not. So in terms of it's a new arena for LADOT, but it's not for the city. So the city has its experience recently with the port and a private company working on a product that the private company already had. They were looking to try and extend it, modify it, morph it to be very, very much a port, an LA port type of product. They were beyond successful, wildly successful. And so what the city and the port and this company did is they entered into, as with any companies that do intellectual property, they entered into a relationship whereby that work, which was done in collaboration and co-collaboration, itself is identified, and as the new product is sold, marketed and whatnot, there is this construct then of rev share. So that's an example. The city, very specifically, wants this collaboration to work for the companies. So intellectual property as an essence, there's still work to be done to define exactly what does that look like. It's very likely to be on a case-by-case basis. There will be probably some generic statements about what needs to happen, and then on a case-by-case basis, because again, public-private partnerships will likely be embodied in contract form, and so we'll see it in RENUM treatment. But the goal, minimally, is to get to something like fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. Let's build. And I would challenge your word about co-build. We want to co-create. You're going to be the builder. You're going to build, you're going to be the innovator, but there is an opportunity at the very early stages for LADOT and this group to come together and begin to challenge certain assumptions, certain things. Salida, for those of you who watched Uber Elevate, towards the very end of her comment, made the statement that the FAA, who has for years historically owned the definition of planes, the definition of safety, and sort of the overarching framework in which you could fly, right, is now going to be challenged with the new type. So her comment was, the FAA will let you fly, but it's cities that will let you land. And so the idea of the city is to be at the table as you contemplate and create, and to give you a different sense or a different lens to add to those dimensions of constraints that you're working with. That make sense? Okay. Other hands up questions?
Jimmy Kim with Verizon. Just wanted to follow up on the comments and the question from this gentleman here regarding the way in which we engage. You mentioned this whole task order solicitation process. Can you sort of expound on that, and like how do you take that from that high level to decisions around implementation? Because we're all, solution providers here, right? We have great ideas, right? And I suspect that there are going to be a lot of great ideas proposed in front of you. So how do you make that decision?
So the question is about the process, and I think it's important that you all understand that it is very much LADOT that will be sitting in the seat making the decisions about which products and services we will award. And if we have, I like to talk about LADOT as an activist investor, and that although in my time in city transportation, we get approached all the time by private companies talking about wanting to partner, and what that means is that occasionally we'll share data with you, and we want to be able to say that we're partners, but we're not actually going to partner. And my takeaway from that is that we need to have real skin in the game if we want to be real partners. So the task order solicitation process is about that. It is about investing our public money in taking chances, iterating, learning, failing, and finally learning and succeeding. So what the product manager role is to work internally with LADOT project managers to create the scopes. And what you'll see in the strategic implementation plan, which we will mail out to the LADOT Innovation distribution list, and then will be posted up on Urban Mobility LA, right, Marcella, that's where to go, tomorrow. But you'll have a copy of the PDF, and you can look at it. And what you'll see of those 10 to 30 or so descriptions, a very high-level description of either a problem statement or a sort of thumbnail scope of work. What the product manager's job is to sort of go out into the world and map it and understand it, help LADOT project managers create substance to the technical scopes of work, and then we take it from there. The LADOT project manager and myself or Marcel are the ones that actually oversee the task order solicitation process and the selection process. So that is really being done, and there is very explicitly a wall between product managers like, the folks here, CityFi, Ellis & Associates, because they are also on the bench. And we wanted to make sure that there was a very clear separation between what we're asking them to do, which is really create a new community of collaboration and excitement and engagement, and then the actual selection process. Is that your question? Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
John.
Look who wants the microphone. No, I just want to say that what's so exciting about this is LADOT and Salida and John giving you guys the opportunity to reinvent the way you do business. And you can sort of read between the lines. I mean, like there are companies in this room that deploy government relations people and lobbyists and all of that stuff. You don't need that, right? And there's an opportunity to rethink the way you share revenue, for instance, right? And you might think, well, that's a little scary, right? So this is government putting it all out there and saying, we're going to reinvent the way we do business. But let's be honest, the private sector, there are a lot of opportunities. They can be recalcitrant, right? Sort of old school, some of you in this room. So
Nobody in this room.
Nobody in this room.
You guys know who he's talking about.
But think of this as an opportunity. If you do rethink the way we do business, which needs to happen, and you can jump on a contract, or another city, can jump on a contract, you can see this becomes a very virtuous cycle where you can lower the total cost of business development and sales and all that. And you can see that LADOT is going to be on the absolute forefront, right? So people are going to be looking at what happens here. Other cities, Seattle, DC, New York, will be like, that's a great idea, we should do that. And then have the ability to actually go do it. So I just want to chime in and sort of challenge you guys to meet LADOT and rethink the way you do business, which includes, as Salita said, sharing your data, right? Thinking about where does the revenue go? And if you have access to the city streets, should there be a payment for that, right? All of that stuff. But it's a huge opportunity and a competitive advantage as a member of the bench that others won't have, to be completely honest.
All right, a few more minutes for questions. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You touched briefly about the Access Center. I know there's a report out there to co-locate Access and Caltrans District 7. As you start integrating more technologies, is that part of this process too, start looking into more to what needs to be replaced and upgrade?
So there's an existing project called ATSAC 3.0, which I know Dan Mitchell's in the room here, which has a definition and has work. And part of the goal of this process with the existing project's effort was to actually, right here, is to say, okay, this is a document for urban mobility. There's a document for urban autonomy. We're going to be building some technology. We have to take into account existing projects. And so part of the work kicking off this week was scope reviews of existing projects. Where are they? What are they doing? And then understanding where they are against where we might want them to be in light of this. And so to your very specific question, yes, ASEC, there was a project underway. It is being reviewed. Urban mobility being reviewed. Coding the curve being reviewed. And all being reviewed through an eye of this. Not changing the fundamental goals, but changing possibly the implementation approach so that it implements in line with this and also integrates properly into that product. Okay? A few more minutes and then we're going to wrap it up.
So Dan Mitchell is the Assistant General Manager on the executive team that oversees ATSAC and ATSAC 3.0. Yeah, what up, Dan Mitchell? Round of applause. Nice. What was about to happen? Was it Cabbage Patch or what was that? Okay, cool. He started his career at LADOT and ATSAC and also Express Park, so he really knows the beating heart of LADOT has always been innovation. I think it's also important, the reason why we put ATSAC 3.0 under this product manager scope of work was because it is the single largest and continues to be, from my perspective, most sophisticated traffic management center in the US, if not North America, if not the world. It's a model, and it's also a tremendous asset for thinking about who will be ground control for the autonomous fleets on the ground and in the sky in the future. When ATSAC starts doing two-way communication, pushing information out and not just pulling information in, there is huge potential for it to sort of serve as a model, and we recognize it as a really valuable asset and something that was built for the 84 games, but is now very much at the center of how we look ahead and think about managing mobility for the 28 games. So Dan he's not making a face, so I feel like I haven't said anything crazy. Right. So he's the guy, and will be very integrally involved in architecting that. I don't think you're going to see LADOT make a massive shift to something like video detection or anything like that. I think it is going to be about taking the incredible asset that we have and building on it so that it is capable of managing and controlling and pricing and settling routes and mobility citywide.
Okay, really quickly, one mic and then we'll call it. Yep, yes ma'am.
I just wanted to piggyback off Salita's comment about the Coalition for Transportation Technology. I know they had an RFI, and I know there is this potential contracting mechanism. I mean, as we all know, LA is a crazy place, and City of LA is one thing, and the region is another. Everything from integrated corridor management to, microtransit to the future of ATSAC and LA RTMC. How do you envision, that coalition moving from information sharing to true partnership and project opportunities?
So I like to think of LADOT and the City of LA as being an incredibly massive laboratory where we can take risks, and then Metro can scale those. And so I think of, we continue to support and participate in the coalition and think of it as a tool to scale. Right, so not necessarily that's the lab. I think that LADOT is the lab, and we work closely with our partners at Metro in the Office of Extraordinary Innovation. That is sort of the center of a lot of those efforts at Metro. But I think for a few reasons, LADOT is better positioned to become more agile more quickly than Metro is. One of the reasons for that is ATSAC. And ATSAC includes 5,000 intersections, not just in the City of LA, but in the region. And so it does offer us a pathway to regionalism in the way that we manage movement. And then the second thing is that the way that we deliver our transit service now is through a concessioning model. So we concession that service. We put LADOT transit service out to bid. So those drivers and transit operators are covered under collective bargaining agreements, but they are not direct employees of LADOT, which means we deliver that service 40% cheaper than Metro does. And it's easier for us to take risks, change it, play with it, tinker with it. And so we think that that's a good sort of place for us to be playing. So I think there will be a lot of crossover, obviously, between the coalition, what the coalition does and the city does. But I think that you'll see us moving faster and at more volume first, and then hopefully being able to hand off good ideas that are battle tested in the city to the region. Last question. Julia gets the last word.
Thank you for that honor.
Drop the mic.
Julia Thane from Siemens. So the program that you put together looks really great for piloting and for starting out the conversation about innovation. But picking up on your last point, Salida, it seems less agile in terms of scaling. So I'm wondering, it sounds like you're going to be partnering with LA Metro and with some of the other consortia around the city in order to start scaling some of the programs specifically on transportation. But how are you planning on doing that for other things that sit outside the transportation sector, like our telecommunications, colleagues over here, that again probably need the partnership of other agencies and other departments, and that aren't going to sit directly with LADOT? And pointedly on that question, something like an integrated data analytics platform, how are you going to partner on something like that?
So good question. I'll start and then John can finish. So I think for us, part of the work that we're doing in defining APIs for private mobility operators is meant to help us scale at a much lower labor cost than we currently scale, right? So if we create and define APIs for the operation of e-scooters and dockless bike shares in Los Angeles, and we have, a digital map of the city, and we've managed the curb, and we can say, here's where you need to consolidate and organize your fleet, and then, 6 months from now, we decide that they're not serving particular neighborhoods very well, so then we want to push another spec out that says, your fleet, you must always have at least 10 to 20% of your fleet in these particular neighborhoods. For me, that is a much more elegant and low-cost way to scale management and oversight and outcome-focused regulation than our current model, which is, let's have a crew in a truck drive around and, move things and possess them and put them in a warehouse somewhere. So for me, the sort of future is definitely about thinking through those kinds of conversations. You'll notice in the SIP there's also a very intentional focus on design. There are a couple of call-outs in there, one for the creation of design guidelines of digital infrastructure, and another for the creation of design guidelines for autonomous rights-of-way on the ground and the sky. So we also think there is some sort of rulemaking or bookmark setting that we can do that will guide the things, what the actual things are. If 5G requires the deployment of thousands of cells that hang on streetlights, then it's our job to sort of set the rules for what those should look like and how they should function and how they should integrate. So I think there are those kinds of beginnings of thinking in there, but I think we're also open, right? This is the kind of conversation that we'd like to have on an ongoing basis with the community that's here.
And I'll wrap that by the year 1992, a young man by the name of Linus Torvalds sent out an email that said, hey, I've written something, don't know if it's going to be anything really big, but I welcome your thoughts. And today, 26 years later, we now know it as Linux powering 98% of pretty much the world's infrastructure at all scale, whether it's Wall Street, companies, and others. And so to the comment being made, I don't know that we have the answer in terms of how do we scale, other than as a model. If you look at Linux, there are 17 different distributions, but they all adhere to the same API set. Companies can do what they want, they can build what they want, and they can use what they want in terms of private or public services, but they adhere to an interface. So when we talk about data or data analytics, right? I can use visualization tools, or I can use private tools that are more geared towards something. That's the theme or the philosophy that we're trying to get to. Again, the statement I take you back to, don't envision the future, enable it. As long as we can enable to the North Star of dignity, design, and openness, that's where we're ultimately going to get to. We think there's success there. With that said, do you want to close it, or do you want me to close it? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for coming. I do appreciate it. You're going to see, like I said, more. You're going to get the email from the SIP today. It'll be posted tomorrow. We open up for innovation and conversation to LADOT Innovation. And from that then standpoint, we'll say thank you so very much and let the journey begin. Take care and enjoy your day.